What I'm going to do this morning is pull in a number of pieces that I have. One, I've had the great opportunity to work with Ken and his team this last year under this project that we're going to talk about a little bit. And also a lot of years with the technology industry. So as Ken mentioned, I was the Chief Operating Officer of Quest and then left that. And actually agree with your comments there about once you leave the corporation, how things change a little bit. So I'm going to pull that in. I'm going to pull some of this pieces. And then also, I want to give a shout out to Kellogg because I had the great opportunity to attend the CEO Perspective, which is a year-long program at Kellogg in which I took a lot of concepts that I learned there, pushed them into the company that I was working at Quest. And I want to pull all three of those together for you this morning and hopefully get some pieces for you out. So what I want to do is cover 3 myths that are out there about innovation and also give you some examples of why they're myths and why things can be different for you, whether you're in a small business or a large corporation. So hopefully my comments this morning will apply to all of you and each of you can take a piece of that. So myth number 1 is that you have to invent if you want to innovate. And I'm here to tell you that is not true. Matter of fact, most of you are not going to be inventors, right? Most of you are going to take something that's already in your company, something that's there today, and put it together in a different way. It's not going to be radically different, but in fact, it'll be something that you have either through the eyes of your customers or through your employees. And when you put that winning combination, you will have an innovation. So I want to tell you all that you don't have to be Apple. You don't have to be all these great companies to be innovative. Sometimes it's a process that you're changing. Sometimes it's a way you talk to your customers. And in fact, sometimes it is some new products that you put together. So to prove this point, I want to give you 3 examples of things that are out there today that are very simple so that I can show you exactly why this can happen in your company too. The first is I want to show you the travel agency. So if you think about a travel agency, in the days when we were traveling, we would do what? We'd go buy books. We'd buy magazines and rip out articles. And then we'd think about it and talk to other people. And we called a person that had the title of a travel agent. Remember those individuals who wore headsets? And we called them on the phone. And we talked back and forth. And we faxed pictures. And it took us about 3 weeks to plan a 3-day trip when you think about how that worked. Well, today we do things a lot different. We look at the travel business very, very differently. And in fact, the whole financial world has changed around how travel operates. But there really isn't that much different, right? We still have airlines, we still have hotels, we still have all things that happen. But a couple things that happen in the world. One, we had database technology and search technology, and then we had tools, right? We had things like a computer, the smartphone, the pads that you're all carrying today. And that allowed us to now operate travel differently. And in fact, new companies were also emerged from all that if you think about how we do travel. But the basics are still the same. We're just looking at it through a different lens. And in fact, as customers, we said we want to do this differently. So now we go online. We can comparison shop, right? We can actually make comments about what we think. We all can comment on the airlines, and not that they care at all, but we all put something in there that says we're unhappy with what happened with the airlines. We can now share our experiences. We now can look 3D into a hotel room to see if it's the one that we like. We can plan an entire trip around the world in about 3 minutes compared to how it would have taken quite a bit of time. But in fact, the content is all there. It's still the same. We just have different tools that we use. Extremely innovative. As I mentioned, these companies now came about because of that model. Another industry to think about is banking. Right? Today, we still drive by. There's all kinds of banks everywhere. Still things that happen when we go there. But we all go online. Right? Now we just do the same thing that we used to do when we walk in there, but we do it online. In fact, we can do more. Right? So again, the content was there. All the things have been there. We just access it and operate it in a different way now. Another industry is the mobile music. Now, I'd have to say we all would agree that Apple definitely is an inventor, but they also are an innovator, and they took an industry that was there and moved it. So remember the days when we actually wanted mobile music? And we carried around something like this, and we'd go look for an outlet, look for an electrical outlet, or we'd carry a lot of batteries with us, and we always ran out of batteries to have our music where we want. Now we attach something to our arm when we're running, right? Now we have it everywhere. We pick what we want, we only do it the way we want to do it, and it's extremely mobile. But again, it's still the basics. So if you just think, oh, that was an evolution that occurred. It wasn't really a new invention per se. It was just something that became innovative. So the bottom line I want to share with all of you is that in your companies, look to your customers and ask your employees. And you'll see that you don't have to invent to be innovative. You can just move forward. It could be a new process or a new way that you talk to your customers. So myth number 2 is that you have to create a department. That the way you do innovation is you give someone the title, you put these 4 people over in that corner room, and you say, go ahead and innovate and give me a ring when you're done. Innovation is not a department. It's not going to happen if you do that. Whether you're in a small company or a large company, you cannot just give someone a title and say, off you go ahead and innovate. What it is an ecosystem. And you've heard that word used a lot this morning. So what innovation becomes is an ecosystem, and I want to share with you what the state of Colorado has done through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. They've created an ecosystem that has 3 parts to it. And it's interesting this morning how the speakers have a little different twist on it, but it comes to the same thing, right? An ecosystem with 3 parts: business, education, and government. So when those 3 come together in an ecosystem, you can actually get something moving. Now, this would have been a time when we were talking about this, as Ken mentioned, where the governor could have said, Ken, I'd like you to create an innovation department. I'd like you to go and set up people and say that. Now, luckily, we have a governor who listens to a lot of different people. So when people said to the governor, don't do that, instead, go and talk to the businesses, let the businesses of Colorado tell you what they want, let them be the voice. If you keep it a government-owned project, it's not going to work. He's not always going to be here in this role, right? So the way to sustain this is to have the businesses drive it and let it continue past that. So the first step there was to look at businesses that were out there. And so what we did is we took a lot of work that had already been done. So there was a lot of groups, a lot of consultants, a lot of different industry people who already defined what was in Colorado, right? And so the first job was to say, well, who's here? Who's here, who's growing, what's going on? And so with all this work that was put together, again, most of it had already been done somewhere else. It was just kind of pulling it together. We came up with 15 key industries. And I say about 15 because some you could put together and you were trying to get caught up in which one is which. But the point is who was already here in Colorado, who was growing, and who had the potential to grow. And so with those industries, it's the ones you would expect, right? So one of the big ones is manufacturing. Manufacturing in the state of Colorado brings $18 billion to the economy of Colorado. $18 billion. And manufacturing is a very big umbrella when you think about it. 6% of all jobs in Colorado are in the manufacturing space. Specifically, when you look at the computer and electronics subsegment of manufacturing, it is the largest exporter to other countries. 30% of all exporting out of Colorado somewhere else comes from those 2 subsegments, from computers and electronics. And by that I mean telephone equipment, computer equipment, chips, advanced medical devices, the things that you think of in that space. So it's a very big industry here, and it's growing very quickly. And it encompasses a number of different areas. Another key industry that you would expect here is agriculture. It's not just the traditional one that we think of, but it's in fact all the outshoots of what's happening in agriculture. Right now, Colorado is a leading state for startup food companies. Now, how does that happen? That's kind of odd when you think about it. Now, as I researched that a little bit, what I found out was it was because we're all average people, right? So they say if it works here, it's going to work anywhere. So if you can introduce a new food here in Colorado, and it works in Denver, or works in Boulder, or works somewhere in Colorado, it's going to work everywhere else. So I guess that's kind of the theory behind it. I happen to think it has a lot to do with the agriculture business, that there's just a food chain, if you think of it that way, that works very smoothly here in Colorado. The other industries you would expect, technology, aerospace, bioscience, all big industries in Colorado, all growing very quickly. So what we did is we went to those companies, and the key leaders in all those companies, whether they were small, large, rural, in the metro area, and said, what would it take for business to be stronger in Colorado? And that was a lot of conversations that occurred about a year ago. A lot of companies, a lot of leaders took time to step forward and say, here's what I think could happen. And what was interesting to me through all this was no matter who you talked to, no matter what industry, what size, they all had 6 objectives that they wanted to talk about. Didn't matter who they were, didn't matter where they came from. And the 6 that you see here on the screen are what they were talking about. So the first one was retain and grow businesses. And what they were talking about was the businesses in their system, right? So if they were in manufacturing, they said, we need more of me. We need more of who I sell to. We need more of who supplies me. And this is where you got that cluster development that you hear a lot of people talk about. So when they were saying retain and grow, they wanted to hold the companies here because they said, if one of my big vendors leaves, it's really a problem for me. And I'd like more of my suppliers and vendors to be here in Colorado. The second thing we heard over and over was increase access to capital. Now, I agree with the comments that were made earlier. It's not that capital's not there, it's they don't know how to get it. Or the people who have it say, the people come and ask me for it, I'm not giving it to them. So it really was connecting those two pieces together. So it's not that capital isn't there, it's how do I get access to it. And a lot of businesses I talked to said, I don't even know where to start. You know, I don't know where to begin, I don't know where it is, I don't know where to find it. And so a challenge there is to get that going. The third one was create and market a Colorado business brand. We're very good at tourism, right? When you think of Colorado, you think great place to vacation, great place to come, but you don't always think of it as the business side. So you saw recently that Governor Hickenlooper put in a new chief marketing officer. New role as far as I've heard. I think there might be one other state that I've heard of it from. But a chief marketing officer to focus on creating a business brand. Because all these businesses said, I can't do it alone. I can't take my segment and make it happen. I need this umbrella of Colorado. Next thing we heard was educate and train the workforce of the future. So again, you hear this over and over, you know, that we educate people very well here, but they leave, right? Or what was stunning to me was when I talked to businesses and they said, I have a lot of jobs open, I can't fill them. Then you go and talk to universities and they say, I have a lot of kids, they don't have jobs. And so how does that happen? So this connecting again, it's back to this ecosystem of how do you pull all that together? The next objective we heard was cultivate innovation and technology. This is one of those steps right here. Coin is one of those pieces. But again, people say, I don't know what's here. I didn't know we had a lab. I didn't know the university was doing this. I didn't know CSU had those pieces there. I mean, so again, connecting that all up together. So this blueprint was really a way to continue the conversation and have some structure around it. Now, the next step was to go inside the government. So Ken's organization, the Office of Economic Development, could not do this alone. So when the businesses came up and said, here's what I need, we wanted to make sure their voice was very strong. And interesting enough, all the businesses that you see here, the ones that I'm showing, are just examples of ones that we talked to. They didn't always know each other, right? So they didn't even know that there was someone else across the way that could help them with something. And so they began to start to talk with each other and say, you know what, if we had a voice together, we could probably go and get something done in the universities, and we could probably go and get something done inside the government if we had a stronger voice as a group together. So the next step was to go back into the government groups and say, okay, they're not talking to each other. So all the different departments, Department of Agriculture, the Department of Labor, the Department of Natural Resources, all the ones that you see right on that list weren't communicating with each other. And again, the Office of Economic Development could not do it alone. You can't solve a problem in education without going to the Department of Education, right? And the labor group, you know, when they said, when I was telling them, you know, why are businesses saying they have jobs and other people saying unemployment's high? What is going on here in Colorado? So each group began to talk to each other. And as we started having these business meetings, we started inviting them to come to all these discussions. And so they started creating, in essence, their own clusters as they began to talk to each other. The third element, as you heard me talk about, was the universities and the community colleges and all the organizations that have some form of education here in Colorado. So again, rural, in the Front Range, community colleges and the universities. And how do you bring them together? And have them say, you know what, I know you have that business council. I would say this to Ajay, I know you have that, but we still need to work more, right? And make it stronger and pull it together. So again, the concept was under the blueprint. So how do you create each of these objectives and put them together in a conversation? Now, what we started doing was having key industry networks. So we've kicked off 9 total. But it's very important to have the voice of the businesses to continue to sustain this piece there. So we invited lots of different people to these groups, and the objective was to have short-term deliverables. So it was not that we're going to fix I-70, we're not going to fix the airport, we're not going to fix everything that's out there, but how do we have things that we can do in the next 6 months? My biggest fear with all this was that we'd create a big old document, flop it on the governor's desk, and it would sit there. Right? So we're not writing up all kinds of things. We're creating little business plans that actually have really short-term deliverables. Not changing the law, we don't have any new money, right? There's not a new budget anywhere, but how do we create things that happen very quickly? So we call these key industry networks. Again, it was a combination, an ecosystem of the universities, the businesses, and the government entities all working together. So not a department, but actually an ecosystem there. So myth number 3 is that if you just tell people to innovate, tell your employees to innovate, they'll just do it, right? So if you go off of this conference and you go back to your company, you say, I want you all to innovate, it'll just happen. And of course, you know that's not true, right? So I want to talk for a minute about how to create that culture, how to create that inside of your company. Now, culture is a word that people use a lot to say, you know, I'm just going to make this happen. If I start at the top, everybody else is going to follow. And that's not really true either, right? You've got to make this accessible to everybody. So I'd first ask you all to ask yourselves, am I thinking about what's available to me in the world? So when you think about the access that you could have to all the information, all the individuals, people outside of your circles of influence, are you tapping the world? So you're really tapping all the capabilities that are out there, you yourself. You can't expect your employees to do it if you're not doing it. And there's so much available to you. I mean, between all the technologies that we have and all the platforms and everything that we can work with, you really have to ask yourself, are you opening your eyes to the bigger world that's out there? Because it's very large and there's lots of information, sometimes overwhelming, but again, how do we tap into it? So I want to introduce a concept to you that I call socially constructed knowledge. And by that I mean, how do you use all the social media and all the social networks that are out there to get knowledge and to construct the knowledge inside of your company? Now, the first thing to usually start with is you can think of all the social medias, right? And social media just being, you know, how do you take a communication and make it a dialogue back and forth? So how do you use the medias to do that? And it is things like internet forums, right? It's things like blogs. It's things like web blogs. It's wikis. It's podcasts. All these terms that you've had. And I would challenge you that if you're not using these inside your company right now, you need to. If those words that were up there were foreign to you, learn about them. Go ahead and ask your kids. Ask the younger employees in your companies and use these tools. You know, podcasts. They started out just being you know, conversations back and forth, and now they've got video in them, and they've got you know, two-way communication going. And so use all the things that are out there. That social media, all those tools, of course, have created the social networks that you're all familiar with, right? The Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Every single one of your companies should be present in one of those areas, if they're not today. And I know that's tough because we all first thought those were just interesting ways, you know, social. So when we first thought about, you know, Facebook or Twitter, it was fun, right? You did it because you wanted to have fun. But now, as it was mentioned, you heard from all the companies, especially even Coke this morning. I love that story. It was painful for him to let that happen. But you need to have all those tools inside your company and let it happen. And if you're not comfortable with it, give it over to somebody else that is. And let the rest of the employees run that piece. The socially constructed knowledge will feed your company and help you be innovative back out again because you'll gather information. And again, opening your eyes to different worlds. So another concept I want to introduce to you quickly is something called crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is really taking a function that you did, probably a person inside your company did, you're outsourcing it into the crowd. And by the crowd, I mean an undefined area. You're asking for a call. It's just out there, and you're letting the crowd define your business. And that sometimes can be scary because you think, I don't know what that crowd's going to be, and I don't know what they're going to say about my company. And you see this used a lot in a lot of different areas. But one example I want to give you is Lay's potato chips, of all companies. So Lay's, you know, is a very big, obviously big company. They have lots of scientists, lots of market research, lots of people tell them the next flavor of potato chip. What's going to be hot, what's going to sell, what are people going to buy? But this time they took a different approach, and they actually crowdsourced their next flavor of potato chip. And so what they did is they put it out there in an undefined area and said, you know, what do you think? Now, if you look at this closely, at this screen here, you'll see that not only were they asking what potato chip, but they also captured their audience, right? So they captured who are you, what are you, what's your email, a little bit of demographics, because they generally don't know who their customers are. I mean, it's hard to track, you know, who's buying something like that. So this company used this to not only develop their next flavor of potato chip, but to gather information about their customers. And of course, they threw in some fun. They actually, you know, I don't know if it was $1 million, but you know, some big price where they could actually, you know, whoever got the best flavor wins. But you'll see pretty soon that Lay's will be coming out with some flavors that you never, ever would have thought of. And their scientists would have never thought of, and their market research never would have thought of. They put it out in this crowdsourcing capability. It came in very quickly. You'll see crowdsourcing also used to raise money. All of you entrepreneurs out there, you've seen that used quite a bit. Set it out there, $10 per person. Before you know, you've got $10,000 to start your company. You'll see crowdsourcing used for software development. If you don't want to go out and hire it, you put it out there, see who can do it real quickly. I want to introduce a company to you in Boulder, actually Colorado, called Teresa. Teresa is a company who has made a whole business out of crowdsourcing. And what they do is that when you are looking to optimize your search capabilities or get your company placed better, they will help you do that. And so what they do is they have close to, best I could tell, they're not a public company, so you can't follow everything, about 2,000 crowd people out there that they then put out and say, okay, here's a company. So if I had my company, here's my company, here's what I'm trying to do. And they wait and see who responds that will help me get it out there. It's a paid for search, basically. So I then pay those individuals, whoever did the best search for me. So it's all results based, but a very unique way to not have to hire a whole company to create the best search capability for my company, but in fact to use them to put it out there in that way. So just one example of a company all of a sudden popped up inside of Boulder, and they're making a living out of this and have very, very big clients and are doing very well. Another company here in Colorado called Weigh-In is using similar technology to basically listen to what their customers have to say. So they're doing it in two ways. They use it, or companies use it inside their company to talk to their employees, to say, what do you think? It's a very quick way to survey, a very quick way to get results. Again, it goes out to the masses and then is aggregated very quickly. And they also use it for their customers, a way to put it out there. So this company facilitates it for you if you wanted to use this inside of your company. They also introduced a new product called Tweet Polls, which was a real interesting way to create news, make news happen. So using tweeting capability, but polling it very fast. What they added to it, again, was a media that was already there, which was video and pictures. And so that you can very quickly assess what you want to do. They're creating news, they're responding to news. And again, using this to move along and have that socially constructed knowledge that I was mentioning. So this is how you can use tools like this to gather and to push back out into your company. Again, it's a way for you to expand your business and a way to pull that back in. Now, the state of Colorado, in particular the Office of Economic Development, has used all these tools to understand best practices. So people in Ken's organization now are able to see what else is going on in the world, who else is doing it. Why do you want to start all over again? So why not take what's happening very quickly out there and use it inside of your company and make it happen? So I share with you 3 myths that I just want to cover quickly. The first one is that you don't have to invent to innovate. So hopefully you take away, look to your customers, look to your employees, look inside your company, and you'll be surprised how innovative you can be very, very quickly. The second is innovation is not a department, right? It's an ecosystem. So even inside your company, take a model and make it happen inside of your company, reach outside. I gave an example of the state of Colorado, how these key industry networks have become very successful by opening up those doors between the departments, inside government, education, and then also the voice of the businesses. And the third myth is that I really want you to use socially constructed knowledge, right? So you just can't tell people to innovate. You just can't go back to your company and say, I want you all to start being innovative, and hand them a book, which is a lot of times what happens too, right? Read this book and now you're going to be innovative. But actually open yourself up to all the tools that are out there and use socially constructed knowledge to make things happen inside of your company. So with that, I thank you very much for your time this morning, and I hope you enjoyed the summit. Thanks.